certainly has received a lot of communication about what is the restructuring potential going on within the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. So there is discussion, and most likely we will introduce legislation. It will be in an exempt committee, and then most likely come to this committee to require that nothing be done of a major restructure until a report is given to this committee. So I just thought that I would tell you that. You don't necessarily need to tell your constituents. It's up to you, but it's clear that something needs to be done more than what we have been doing. We will start our committee meeting now with a hearing. I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 390. And for a brief overview of the legislation, the chair recognizes the Senior Assistant Reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee. Senate Bill 90 provides that each school year, beginning in 2027, no school that participates in a food service program, school lunch program, or school breakfast program shall serve food that contains food additives. You can see the list of those additives on page 1 of the bill in lines 12 through 24. Additionally, the bill would require schools to certify that the school facility being inspected pursuant to the Kansas Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act does not serve food that contains any of those additives. If a school cannot so certify, the school would submit a corrective action plan to the Secretary of Agriculture within 30 days of the inspection, and the school would be required to post notice of the violation and the corrective action plan on the school's website for 1 year. If a school incorrectly certifies that it does not serve food that contains one of those additives, the school would be required to post notice of the violation and their corrective action plan on the school's website for 1 year, and also notify the parent or guardian of the students of that school. The bill on page 2 provides definitions of certain terms used in the bill, and under these definitions, school would mean each school district and non-public school in the state that offers any of the grades kindergarten through 12, and the bill would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Committee, do you have questions of our reviser? Seeing none, thank you. Our first conferee this morning will be Senator Kenny Titus. Senator Titus, welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'll be brief this morning because I think the intent of this bill is pretty straightforward. The idea here is that let's get healthy food in kids' stomachs at schools because it's the right thing to do, right? Most of the things on this list are petroleum-based additives. We don't need to be putting that in school lunches, and this is an opportunity to make that food better, safer, and healthier. The piece I think I'll testify on just a couple of points. I list the other states in my testimony that have already passed legislation, and you'll see that there's concern about supply chain issues, things like that. I don't believe this will be a concern. Texas, California, 6 other states have already adopted this. So it's about 30% of the United States population already has these requirements in place. So there's already a critical mass of marketplace there. So as far as, from what I've heard anecdotally from distributors like Cisco, this is not going to be a problem to provide these supplies. It's sort of the trend we're moving in anyway. So we'd be joining a movement of states that's heading that way. The other thing is this bill and the list was drawn from some of these other states that have passed laws when it was put together. And what I wanted to do was make sure that this was a bill that would actually be impactful to Kansas families. So some states have just passed this. It just sort of hangs out there. There's no enforcement. There's nothing tied to it. And I didn't want to pass a statute that we'd have to wait 5 years, have a post-audit, and see if it's actually carried out. So what I've done to make this fit for Kansas is the Department of Agriculture, through their Food Safety Division, they already inspect all the central kitchens and the cafeterias as regular course of business. So they'd be the ones that take on responsibility. They'd have all the data. It requires this self-certification, so it doesn't really add to their duties. I want to note, for some reason, Division of Budget requested a fiscal note from Health and Environment, who wouldn't have anything to do with any of this. It's the Department of Agriculture who does the food inspections. And so I have confirmed with them it's 0 FTEs, 0 added cost on the state portion of that. So I did just want to make that clear. But I think it's the right program in place. It's not overly burdensome, and I think it's the best healthy choice we have in front of us. So I'd stand for any questions.
Senator Titus, there are frequent times when the chair questions why the Division of Budget has fiscal notes, such as they do. But we do have questions for Senator Titus. Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing another bill to our conference. I'm wearing this tie for you, by the way. Senator Kennedy, or not Senator Kennedy, he's been talking a lot. Does this kind of fit into their plan or not? And I do like your explanation of why these are problems, different things in there.
This does align with those Make America Healthy Again priorities, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Additional questions of Senator Titus? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that this does not affect anything other than the reduced price lunches. So if there's a la carte offerings or if there's food available for sale on Friday nights at a game, that is not affected by this.
That's correct. The intent was to keep this narrow, apply it to lunches that are tied to that federal funding because this is a federal priority that makes sense, and we don't want to get into, Friday night concession stands or bakes. None of that is the intent of this. We want to just focus on the main meals and especially at those younger grades, right, where kids are really growing and they don't have the a la carte options and all that. Let's focus on making those main meals nutritious. I don't think you can stop teenagers from eating junk food as much as people would like.
Additional questions, committee? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Titus, for your presentation. How long have we been putting these additives in the food?
Good question. I would assume quite a long while, probably post-World War II, but it would just be speculation.
I think I'm shocked that if that was bad, why it's been going on so long and somebody hadn't stopped this before now.
Well, I think the answer would be, from most folks, is that the science behind these is funded by the people that make the chemicals, and we'll see this with some other bills this year, that corporate-based science hasn't been thoroughly vetted by the FDA, and now people are starting to ask some real questions. I have a lot of mothers that are concerned about this that have reached out since we put this bill out there that really challenge some of the assumptions on some of these things.
So who decides what's healthy? You know, that we've been doing this for years. We come up with this. Who actually, at the bottom line, decides this is the right thing to do?
Well, we are with this list.
I'm not an expert in this area, so I'm not.
This is what's been put forward from in the other states and the federal sources. I mean, these things change, right? At one point, eggs were bad for you, then they're good for you, then they're bad for you, right? We've decided that whole milk is actually better than low-fat, high-sugar skim milk. We flipped the food pyramid upside down. I think people are challenging a lot of assumptions and going back to more traditional things, and I think in that sense this aligns. And going back to things that are less artificial, I don't think we'll ever regret doing that.
And I hear what you're saying on that. I'm just thinking that there ought to be a Food and Drug Administration, somebody that comes, they go through this, they hear all this, they make a decision, and then that's what we live with. You know, if we're all running around trying to make separate rules on this, I guess this is a complicated enough world, so just my opinion.
I agree 100%, but I may be gone from this world by the time the FDA makes any coherent decision, so.
I wouldn't have guessed your age to be that high, Senator Titus.
It's more of a comment on the FDA's speediness than my age.
Absolutely, Senator Bowser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the parent of a 10-year-old, and my wife is one of those healthy eaters, and she really pays attention to this stuff. I recognize a few of these on here, red 40, yellow 5, and 6. My wife, for example, notices a difference when our daughter has a candy, for example, with red 40 in it, and she becomes very hyperactive and not a good chemical for her. But I'm curious about a BHA. I think that's a preservative. There may be some value there. I'm not sure. I'd like to hear some more testimony. But if there was an amendment to remove BHA from the list, would you consider that a friendly amendment, or would you oppose that, or what's your position?
Probably.
Just,
Oh, sorry.
Senator Bowser, I need you to pronounce the word, not just use it. Go ahead, Senator Titus.
You know, probably, and I've seen the opposing testimony. I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask before I officially say it would be a friendly amendment, but I understand that'll be addressed in.
Yeah, I like this bill. You know, we notice a change in our daughter's behavior when she eats some of these chemicals. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Additional questions of Senator Titus? Seeing none, Senator Titus, appreciate your
Mr. Chair.
testimony this morning. Committee, we do have a House member with us this morning, and I apologize, Representative. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, but I will allow you to pronounce it for us. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kevin Schwertfigger from the House side, the 114th District. Happy to be here to speak to this bill. I greatly favor this bill. I'm passionate about this bill. I had my own bill in the House. It was more brutal. Thought that this would be a better option. But in some ways, I wish it was stronger because our children's health it's so important to me because of my background and my history. You all have backgrounds in caring for children. I served a term on the school board overseeing the kids' needs in my local school district. I have 3 daughters. I have many nieces and now grandsons. My wife served federal jury duty, so while she was on jury duty, I was in charge of feeding my daughters. And they speak still of such a traumatic experience that it was. I didn't think it was that bad, but being a K-State family, we made purple pancakes. And to add to the ingredients in purple pancakes, you take 2 colors that Kyle McNorton loves, and you add those together. One of those has red 40 in it. And I made my daughter sick, and I didn't understand why she was sick. I poisoned my daughter. Why would I poison my daughter? I didn't know. Later, not too many years after that, we find that red 40 is also a poisonous coating on Zithromax in pharmaceuticals. And as the doctor prescribes Zithromax for your daughter, it's weighted, and you give her a high dose up front. You give her 5 pills, then 4 pills, then 3 pills, so she has it in her system. And you notice something is going wrong. What is the matter? She is turned into a sumo wrestler. It becomes a struggle for her to breathe because you didn't realize you poisoned your daughter again. Oh, this is what it is. It's the stupid red 40. Why are we giving this to kids? So we can sell more products commercially. So until you've had it happen to you and then come to the realization, oh, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. She did get better, and she's better now and knows stay away from it, being deathly allergic to red 40. And just speaking with other people and other representatives, I found just yesterday there's another representative on the House side that said, oh yes, their kid, they cannot give them red 40. So that's 2 out of 125. There's probably more. I wish it went further, but we can control what we can control. And I think this is a good bill, and I strongly support it. With the friendly amendment to delete butylated hydroxyanazole, BHA, which is a preservative that they use in the making of sausage. And we're all here making sausage in the legislative process. So we don't want to hurt the making of sausage, because I like sausage. And so I hope that you could take that part out, and then it's full speed ahead, 110%. Thank you very much for giving me your time to listen.
We appreciate you being here. We'll let you stand for questions momentarily. We do appreciate you pronouncing words that some senators could not pronounce. We also, on the Senate side, prefer that when you describe your thoughts on red number 40, that you actually say what you think about that, as in stupid. In any event, committee, do you have questions of Representative Schwarzenegger? Seeing none, we do appreciate you appearing before the committee and your testimony. Committee, our next conferee this morning is Claudia Elkins as a proponent. Ms. Elkins, welcome to the committee.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I strongly support Senate Bill 390, legislation that would prohibit 13 listed food additives from being served in school lunchrooms across the state. I've been following the Environmental Working Group, EWG, since they started in 1993. And if you're not familiar with them, I suggest you look them up and see what they're all about. They provide breakthrough research to help consumers live healthy lives by educating us about harmful chemicals in food and our environment. The additives listed in this bill are on EWG's Dirty Dozen Guide to Food Chemicals, the top 12 to avoid. EWG put all the dyes together in one category. So those on their list that are not included in this bill are BHT, aspartame, propylgallate, sodium benzoate, and sodium nitrite, which is also used in sausage. Okay, like Senator Titus said, a lot of other states have passed legislation, and many more are looking at legislation. 15 states have already enacted bills addressing food chemical policy. 25 states have introduced bills, and I'm glad Kansas is finally catching up when it comes to the safety of our food supply and food additives. For far too long, the FDA has let food chemical companies decide which chemicals are safe to eat. The food additives in this bill are known to cause harm to humans. For example, long-term exposure to brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, harms the nervous system, causing headaches, fatigue, and memory loss. The UK's ban on BVO dates back to the 1970s. More than 50 years after the UK ban, the FDA finally banned it in 2024, and companies had until 2025 to remove it from their products. Potassium bromate, which is added to flour and used in many packaged baked goods, may cause cancer in humans. Brazil, Canada, the EU, and the UK have banned it. Utah bans it in school meals. The FDA hasn't reviewed the safety of this food additive since 1973. Research is coming out all the time to shed new light on these additives. Propylparaben is an endocrine disrupting chemical that causes reproductive harm, reduced sperm count, decreased sperm quality, and testosterone levels, among other harms. Azodicarbonamide, or ADA, an unwelcome ingredient in baked goods, is the plastics industry's chemical foaming agent of choice. It's used in yoga mats, for crying out loud. It breaks down completely during bread making, but 2 of the breakdown products, semicarbazide and urethane, are known to cause cancer. ADA is not approved for use in either Australia or the EU for safety concerns. FDA approved ADA as a food additive in 1962 and has not thoroughly tested its potential to harm human health since then. Butylated hydroxyanazole, designated possible human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. EU classifies it as an endocrine disruptor because of its ability to lower testosterone and the thyroid hormone thyroxine. Titanium dioxide. FDA last examined the risks of this additive in 1966. But research in recent years shows there are possible health harms. European food safety regulators say it's no longer safe for human consumption, citing a concern for genotoxicity could not be ruled out. Concerns about children's behavior and consumption of food dyes dates back to the 1970s, when pediatrician Benjamin Feingold first claimed there was a link. In 2021, the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment published the results of a 2-year study that reviewed extensive research. They found that food dyes, like the ones listed in this bill, pose significant risks to children's brain development. I strongly urge you to pass this bill out of committee and send it to the floor for a full vote. And may I suggest that you add FD and C in front of the additives, items 7 through 13, all the dyes, just to provide more clarity. And FD and C stands for the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. In my opinion, we should take this a step further and prohibit the 13 listed food additives in foods sold in the state. This would force food manufacturers to reformulate their products, which will in turn improve people's health. I know this will affect food manufacturers in the state. Mars, a multinational company, uses FD&C Blue 1 and Blue 2 in their M&Ms. They will have to come up with another blue for their M&Ms. Tony's Pizza, made in Salina, contains BHA. A lot of bread products contain BHA. I think even toothpaste. I saw it on my toothpaste. Anyway, these are just 2 of the many food manufacturers across the state. Please don't let the big money industry lobbyists stop you from doing what's right for the health of Kansas school children and the rest of Kansans. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
If you're willing, we will certainly allow the committee to ask you questions.
Sure.
Committee, you have questions of Ms. Elkins. And I must commend you on being able to pronounce some of these words, because several of us on this committee look at those and just kind of scratch our head.
Well, I have a science degree from Washburn, so chemistry.
Good to know.
And I've got grandkids, you know, and like, yeah, you can't prevent teenagers from eating junk food, but we need to do our best. I mean, if we can do something at the state level, I'm all for it.
Senator Francisco has a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're suggesting we add the FD&C?
Yes.
But again, that's something that would have to be interpreted.
It's just a designation. Like when you do research on these ingredients, I mean, there's classifications, and the FD&C is a United States designation going back to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, right? But in Europe, they're assigned E numbers for those dyes. That's the only difference.
Thank you very much. I was lucky enough to work 2 years in London in the 70s, and they had an American food store that at some point then could no longer sell much of American food.
Additional questions, committee? Seeing none, really do appreciate you appearing before the committee and offering
you.
your testimony for us.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, I will direct your attention to the fact that we have several written proponent testimony. Debbie Detmer with the Kansas MAHA Council. I guess that's Maha Council, isn't it? Jill O'Connor, Overland Park Precinct Committee woman. Jared Schiffman, Lawrence Schiffman, Kathleen Wimmer, Mimi Green with the FGA Action. Ashley Hayek, some of these names I'm sorry I struggle with if I've mispronounced them. American Works First, Kelly McKenna, CEO in Chronic Disease. That concludes our proponent for SB 390. We now have one opponent appearing in person, Mr. John Donnelly, representing the Kansas Pork Association. Mr. Donnelly, welcome to the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is John Donnelly, and I'm here on behalf of the Kansas Pork Association. I think if you've perused your testimony, you'll see my opponent testimony isn't a lot different than some of the neutral testimony that you'll be hearing from potentially later after me. I did decide that you all might need a whipping boy, so here I am. But appreciate the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Kansas Pork Association, and we are in opposition to Senate Bill 390 as it exists today. Much of what I was here to testify on has already been spoken in some of the questioning and the answers. But BHA, butylated hydroxyanisole, and my name's not short figure, and I can still say it, so I guess that's good. But anyways, that is a product that is widely used, not only in the pork industry, but in other food additives as well. Essentially, it is a preservative, as I understand it, that prevents the oxidation of food. Oxidation of food causes spoilage of food. Eating spoiled food causes things to go wrong in the human body. So that is the use of BHA. It's also my understanding that it's been in use since 1947 is the date that sticks in my mind, but I'm like Senator Titus, I'm not certain that that's entirely accurate, but it's around that time frame. This has been a product that's been approved by the FDA. It is currently, as I understand it, also under review at the federal level by FDA, as many of these listed items are. And to the Senator from Butler's point of, there are systems in place to review these. Questioning the veracity of those, I think, or the veracity of their efforts to do so, I think is probably a good political question to have. However, I think we need to be cautious as we take on legislation like this from a state-by-state standpoint, because we can get a patchwork of things, and that does affect commerce and affects the food supply. With that said, what we are asking today is if we could exempt or take BHA out of this bill, as has been suggested. We would appreciate that, and our opposition would go away, and we would go to a neutral position. So with that, I am welcome to stand for questions as the committee desires. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly answered the chair's question with your last comments, so you would no longer be an opponent with the removal. All right, Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, John Donnelly, for your testimony. I'm kind of like with some of the others here. We're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to serve our people, and we're concerned of what's going on, of what kids are eating in lunch and so on. And we got one list here that says that could lower testosterone and maybe cancer and stuff. And a lot of people have cancer, and we don't know why. And we can all have a list of people that's gone through there. We want our kids to be healthy. Same token, we want our food when we eat the pork or whatever it is, we don't want it to spoil on us anyway. The bottom line, we want to make the right decision. And we make a lot of tough decisions in here, and I'm not a scientist. I don't, we have to listen to other people going in here. So I'm guessing that if they decided now this is no good, BHA, and that's all I'm saying, I'm not going to go there, that I'm confident they could come up with something else to help so the pork would not be spoiled when we going in there. But I don't want to put in something or take something out that doesn't need to be. But I am also very concerned about our kids and what as you are. I know. So I do appreciate your testimony. I just don't know who to believe in there.
No.
Thank you, Mr.
Is there another ingredient, Mr. Donnelly, that you are aware of that could replace the BHA in?
Fortunately, they put an attorney lobbyist up here and not a scientific expert. So I believe there are other preservatives that are out there, and I know there's always research being done, funded, quite frankly, by the Pork Checkoff and other entities to try to come up with other preservatives and other ways to improve pork products and the food supply in general. And I suspect because of some of the questions that are happening because of this type of legislation and the FDA review, I think they would be remiss if they were not researching other ways. But once again, I do caution you that to do this from a state-by-state approach, I appreciate what you're doing, and I totally understand the intent here, but I do think there's some commerce risks involved in that, especially on BHA, because it is a widely used product. So it's a long answer. Sorry.
Additional questions, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to ask Mr. Donnelly some questions while he's here. I think really just to, the intent here is pretty clear for the folks that have a problem with the BHA being included. I think we just as the committee need to hear, so the last official review was, I looked it up, it was made generally recognized as safe in 1958. So that's a long time ago, and we have 4 or 5 organizations that have said this possibly causes cancer. And the EU does allow it in some limited instances, but they allow less of it to be used. And so I guess the question is, when we try to weigh that, how if this does potentially cause cancer, how do we weigh that? Because we don't have the FDA hasn't given us any data since 1958.
And I think that's a great question. I do think, back to the point, it's my understanding that FDA is currently in the process of reviewing many of these now, if not all of them. It's a great question. What I would say is science is the pursuit of knowledge, and they're always looking for different ways to look at things. There's studies that say lots of things. In my limited research, I saw that there's a large amounts of BHA has been proven to show cancerous tumors in rats. There's also a study that says large amounts of BHA has been shown to limit other carcinogenic item. It helps block carcinogenic items from creating tumors in mice. So it's science. I mean, we all recognize what science is when we have hypotheses, we do tests, we end up with theories, we end up ideally with laws. However, scientific laws. I think you raise a good question. And I would also say some of the other organizations and studies that were cited were funded by organizations that many people in the current federal administration also criticize. So, we criticize the FDA, we criticize the WHO. It's science. We're trying to figure this all out. So that's a very long-winded answer, but you didn't expect anything less.
Additional question to Mr. Donnelly, Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Donnelly. You said the FDA is reviewing all this at this time. I guess I'd question why we'd want to get out in front of that and let them do their work and then go from there. That's just a comment. I'm wondering if you'd.
I agree. But specifically to this, my ask is for BHA. I will say that.
No,
but I think those are valid. I think that this is a really great policy discussion that we should all have. And how much are we going to rely on different agencies and science? Also weighing your constituents' concerns. So I tend to agree with your stance on that personally.
So when I look at this list on here, it's got red 3 and red 4. What's red 5, 6, and 7? Who decides that? I get very lost in this kind of thing. So the other thing that I would state is that I went to a basketball game the other night, and the whole bench was as big as I am. So there's some things, out there, and there is kids that are allergic to stuff, and they take tests for that, and then they know what to watch out for, but that doesn't mean we all have to do that because of that kind of thing. So just my comment.
No, well, my response to that is I have my second eldest son is almost 6'1", and those Donnellys don't exist above 6 foot tall, so something's going right. So I think it's a great point, though, is, as a society, we do need to question these things, but we also have to recognize some of the good things that nutrition has done and some of the advances that we've had. So I think once again, great discussion to have. I just caution you to make sure we make good, sound, reasoned decisions.
Additional questions, Mr. Donnelly? Seeing none, appreciate your.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, I will direct your attention to opponent written testimony. Vicki Mullins, who is the president of the Kansas PTA. Those two are the only two opponents we have. We do have written, or I'm sorry, we have neutral in person. Randy Stuckey, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and General Counsel, Kansas Grain and Feed Association. Mr. Stuckey, welcome to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yes, Randy Stuckey here on behalf of the Kansas Grain and Feed Association, and lobbyist Donnelly did a great job this morning. I can't really add too much more to his arguments for maybe some reconsideration of at least that BHA piece. That is the only piece that we have a position on this morning. It is a neutral position asking you to reconsider not adopting or maybe amending the bill if the bill moves forward to pull that piece out. And then we were going to sit on our hands, but I tell you, I received a phone call on Tuesday morning from one of our members, a grain elevator in the state of Kansas, a large grain elevator processor of soybeans and grains. And they said, hey, saw this bill, want you to know that this BHA is something that we utilize a lot in our industry as a preservative for the reasons that Mr. Donnelly spoke to. It's an antioxidant and preserves the grain that's being both stored and used domestically, but also the food and the raw egg commodities and the feed that are exported to other states and other countries. We don't have, if we have the science to show that this is somehow needs to be replaced by another product in the pipeline, then that argument needs to be presented to, I would argue, the US FDA and have the scientists do the science work on that so that we can have some run-up and some direction from those that do know what the science is on this. This august body this morning of this committee, potentially if it moves out of this committee, the whole Senate, is not composed of scientists. I would ask you to wait for the science, I think, on this piece, because it doesn't, if you were to remove this BHA from the pipeline, it doesn't happen without an impact on the industry. It is a product that is utilized extensively from the raw egg commodity on through the final food product, and used extensively since 1947. Since 1958, recognized as safe by the FDA. So almost 80 years of use. And I would ask the committee not to be rash in prohibiting that the BHA from Kansas. I've looked, and I think 7 other states have proposed the removal of BHA. So this is not something that's been adopted by, the removal has not been adopted by many states. It's been proposed and looked at by, I saw 7 states this morning. So that's our position. We would be neutral on the bill. Don't have a position on the other additives, but for the BHA, we would request, if the bill moves forward, that be removed from the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Stuckey. Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. I don't have it here in front of me, but when there's talking, and you mentioned that you might have already answered, but I'm not quite sure. The bill in front of me, well, the testimony from our senator brought it forward. It said it's like 15 other states that passed it. So then you mentioned 7 states that are. So I was wondering what number is correct that has, put this additive into pork. And then secondly, if you're putting additive into meat, and if a state has already passed it and you got it in your meat, do you send it to those states, or how does that work? Thank you.
So for the number, I don't know who else said 15. I'd have to look at the science on there, the research on that. But what I saw this morning was 7 states have considered it. Not passed it, but at least considered it. That's not an overwhelming number of states for the BHA. I assume all of these additives have been presented just like this morning in a list of additives to be considered to be removed. So, and BHA would have been one of those in the list. The other piece, I don't know how that would roll out. If there would be, right, a lot of food products in the pipeline. This is limited to schools and only certain foods at the schools. So, I think it would be a disruptor for sure of how this would be implemented. And even moving forward, it would still be a disruptor until we find a replacement that's cost-effective, that can be widely utilized. And then even still, it would only be for the state of Kansas and any other states that may have adopted that kind of a policy, because nationally, this is a national food processing pipeline. We'd have to set aside Kansas and the other states that adopted it. So it doesn't, you can't pass a bill like this without other considerations and impacts that we might need to think about before we move forward.
Additional questions of Mr. Stuckey. Senator Miller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today. Just real quick, not to put you on the spot too much, but I was wondering if you were aware offhand of any countries. You mentioned that we export grain and that it's treated with BHA during the process. Are there any countries in, say, the European Union or Asia that do not purchase grain from the U.S. because of its BHA content?
Mr. Chairman, that's a fair question, one I should have been prepared for. But I'm not, unfortunately, but I can try to get that answer to you. Thank you.
Yes, we'd appreciate it since he's asked to come up with an answer for us. Additional question of Mr. Stuckey. Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
We do also have Shannon Kimball, Government Relations Specialist, Kansas Association of School Boards, as a neutral conferee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share some neutral testimony with you this morning on Senate Bill 390. I am Shannon Kimball. I'm the Government Relations Specialist for the Kansas Association of School Boards. I am also a current board member, so I serve on a local school board, and I'm a farm girl from Western Kansas, so it's really fun to get to appear before the Ag Committee for the first time this session. KASB is a professional membership organization that represents over 2,000 elected board members, over 330 elected bodies, including school boards and boards of trustees for community colleges, technical colleges, and some of our special ed interlocals. We have a member-adopted legislative platform. We have an extensive year-long process that we go through to create that platform, and what we advocate to you about in the legislature is based on language in that platform. So in my written testimony, I've noted that we have language that relates to, importantly as to this bill, unfunded mandates and creating conflicts between state and federal law. So that is the basis of our testimony this morning. And really we're here neutral because we really share with you the importance of making sure that our kids are receiving healthy food when they eat meals in our schools, and that they are receiving good nutrition and are prepared and ready to learn, because that helps in our mission of helping our students achieve academically in our schools. So, we are fully in support of that goal. There's just some considerations we want you to keep in mind as you consider this bill. One is that this likely will result in some cost increases in our food service programs in our schools. Many, not all of our districts, but many of our districts have food service programs that operate on a revenue neutral basis. Basically, they're self-sustaining through a combination of the federal reimbursements and the meal costs that paid meal and a la carte items bring into those programs. Our food service directors have shared that they do believe that sourcing some of the ingredients and materials that would be compliant with this bill will result in increased costs. And so those costs either get passed on to families who full pay for school meals, or it results in districts needing to pull money from their general funds to backfill any shortfalls in those school nutrition program budgets. There will be cost for retooling menus. There will be cost for retraining staff. Anytime you redo your menus, you have to retrain your staff in your food service program. The higher ingredients costs I mentioned, and then there may be some additional FTE required for the compliance piece that is in this bill. So just want to make sure you understand that there is a cost to districts for doing this, and is likely to increase costs for our meal programs. Second, as to the compliance piece that's in the bill, I appreciated Senator Francisco's question, because I think one of the things we highlighted in our testimony was maybe some concerns about that compliance piece. And then we heard from food service directors the question of, is this intended to apply to the a la carte items that the high school, the Doritos the kids buy at the line with their own money, or the nachos at the Friday night concession stand, that maybe one of the school groups is serving to raise money for something at school. And I think the language that is in the compliance section, so if you look specifically at section B1, and I didn't note this in the testimony that's written, so I can provide a note if that is helpful. But the compliance piece says the school shall certify that such facility does not serve food that contains any food additive listed in subsection A. That's very broad. So if the intention is for the schools to certify that they're not serving any federally eligible meals, breakfast or lunch meals that contain these additives, that may be slightly different in terms of the kind of certification that you are wanting schools to do in their programs, and that might merit some amendment to that particular language in the bill. And at the end of the day, as you're thinking about that, because of some of the supply chain issues that may occur, with a kind of patchwork of states doing different things in this area and having different ingredients on the list, as you noted, Senator, there are a number of states that have banned some or most of these, but as a smaller market in Kansas, it may be difficult for our schools to reliably source all the things that they would need. I would ask you to consider perhaps some flexibility in that compliance requirement about good faith efforts to comply. If our school nutrition folks are doing their best and simply cannot obtain the food products they need for the meals program, I would hate for those efforts to be publicly punished in some way, because I really do think our food service staff do their best to follow the rules and do what's right for kids. And finally, we also are suggesting one other small proposed amendment that I did include in my written testimony. It may seem minor, but I think it's a tweak that is necessary to ensure that the intent of the bill is that all the meals that are served that are eligible for the federal reimbursement, so the breakfasts and the lunches, that the intent is to address those and not just the food that's served to the kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So I included a suggestion for your consideration, or if the revisor obviously has a better idea about how to make sure that it's targeted at the meal itself and not at the free or reduced priced, just those meals, if that makes sense. So with that, those are the considerations we wanted to bring to your attention. I appreciate your consideration and happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Question? Committee? Senator Rowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I was looking through the packet, I was trying to find what a cost would be for this if we implemented this bill. And I'm not sure there is a known cost for if we implemented this bill. But you've mentioned your concerns for cost. What do you think the schools, and I'm using schools being all of our schools, what do you think the schools' cost would be to implement this bill?
I believe that is somewhat difficult to quantify, Senator. I appreciate the question. My testimony is based on input that has been received from our school district staff who work in this area, and typically, as is the case when you go to the grocery store, if you are only shopping the Whole Foods and natural foods section of the store, it's always more expensive than if you are going to the areas where there's a lot more food that has these kinds of ingredients in it. And that is the experience of our food service programs. For our schools that have extensively taken advantage of the farm-to-table programs that have been encouraged over the last several years in partnership with KSDE and other agencies, they do report that sourcing those ingredients is slightly more expensive, which is balanced out by the fact that they think it's way better for our students, and the students like the food better. So, but quantifying that across the entire system in Kansas, I think is a lot more difficult on the front end.
Sometimes with knowledge comes responsibility. And with that, we look at, we've been warned, if you want to call that, was warned with what's in this bill. These things are harmful to our children, harmful to our, actually to all, if that is true. We don't know that's true. But are you concerned, you being with the State School Board Association, are you concerned with liability if you continue serving these foods since you've been warned?
I am an attorney, but I would hesitate to opine, give a legal opinion on that at this time. I think that we have, there's a whole range of issues there relating to things that have been approved by FDA and the protections that that approval provides when you're talking about liability for something like that. I think the bigger thing to keep in mind here is that if we can make our school meals better for our kids, that's a good thing. We just want to ensure that as we do that, that the legislature keeps in mind the cost balance. And so, as I mentioned, if we are asking our food service programs to spend more and that results in districts having to pull money from their general fund, then we're having a conversation about whether the level of funding for our schools through the general fund is appropriate and sufficient to meet all of the requirements that we're being asked to meet in our operations. It's a balance.
Are you concerned about, if we were to pass this, would you be concerned about the food that is in the vending machines?
Well, that is one of the areas that I do think is a policy decision for you to make. Certainly if the bill were to be expanded explicitly to say it not only applies to the school meals, but also to anything that's in a vending machine or anything that a student group wants to sell on Friday night at the football game or any bake sale that a student group is having to fund a special project. Or food that, for example, food that parents bring in for elementary school winter party. That's a whole different set of considerations. And then it gets back to the point that you make that if these things are bad, why are we allowing them in any of our food? And then I think that brings into some of the considerations that Senator Fagg has mentioned about, this is a broader conversation to be had about what we are doing nationally in ensuring that the things that are put into our food are safe.
Thank you for your testimony.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hearing some concern about the timing, and I'm, excuse me, I'm wondering if we talked about starting the inspections a year later would help in terms of implementation. So we would be asking people to do this beginning in 27, 28, but we would start the inspections in 28, 29.
I believe that if the committee would be willing to consider that, it would be helpful to food service programs. As I mentioned, it's not just a matter of saying, okay, we're not allowed to do this, bam, we'll be ready to start the school year in August this year. There is a significant component, and it takes significant time, especially in a larger district, to retool all of the menus, to train all the staff, to do all of the inventory updating and, in the lead time for ordering and all of those things. And so it's possible that if that were the change that would be made, that it would give food service staff an opportunity to really fully implement and be ready for those compliance audits. And then, I think that would be a benefit. Thank you.
Committee, we have time for one more question. Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Shannon. Being a former superintendent, we control what we can control. And so the outside food that comes in, notes to parents could be out there, please try to avoid these additives, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's ways. Also working with wholesalers, they'll supply the food that we ask them to supply. And I've seen that happen when there was other things with the vending machine piece, as Senator Alley made mention of. We had, I don't remember when it was and what specifically, that we couldn't serve anymore, but it was taken out of our vending machines. It happens. And I really appreciate the fact, as you made mention, the local
and being able to buy locally and support our local people and farmers through these programs. And hopefully we can consider to do that further as we continue. And you're right, healthy costs more. But the cost now, or it could cost much higher later. So where are we going to look to do these things? So again, for the safety of the children, we can make adjustments. We can do it as far as the school people. So thank you for your testimony and your concerns.
Thank you.
Additional questions, committee? Seeing none? All right, that is the extent.
Thank you.
We had for today. We will not meet again until Tuesday, so you've got a 4-day weekend from the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee Chairman. I have nothing further. With that, we are adjourned.